Florence introduced me. I am Laurabel. I am your facilitator. I was lucky enough to win one of Canada's 100 Most Powerful Women last year and Entrepreneur of the Year. I run my own consultancy, and I have from Nigeria originally, but have had the pleasure of living in Ontario and Alberta, and now I live in Newfoundland. So I think the only provinces I haven't yet been to are Saskatchewan, all the territories, and PEI. I think that's it. So we're going to work over the next year to make sure we see all of Canada, and that next time I'm here with you, I've done everything I should. So our goals for today are to have a deeper understanding of what intersectionality actually means, to explore some of the barriers faced by 2S LGBTQIA+ newcomers, and to equip all of you with strategies and tools so you can better support the people that show up in front of you every day, regardless of how they show up. So how do we plan on getting there? Because it's one thing to have a goal at the end of the way. You need to know your map to get there. So we're going to understand that intersectionality and the impact it has on you as you do your work, because you are intersectional people, not just individuals showing up at your door. The barriers and challenges that you might be facing in the work that you're doing, but the barriers and challenges those showing up in front of you have had to overcome to be in space with you. We'll learn some safe practices and tools so that you're maintaining your own mental health while maintaining the mental health of the individuals who will be working with you and who you're working for, and then to celebrate you and figure out your next steps. What is intersectionality? So it is a term called by human scientist Kimberly Crenshaw. It examines the overlapping systems of oppression that an individual might face. And a real example, I will give myself as an example, not just the example on the screen. So presenting in front of you today, I show up as a Black woman, but I am also a queer Black woman. And intersectionality means I cannot separate any part of my identity presenting to you. So I cannot just show up as just Black or just a woman or just queer. Those aren't things I can separate. So when I come and I'm presenting that I'm facing issues or barriers, all aspects of me are facing those issues and barriers. So when people show up in your spaces, they might be showing up either in their queer space, but you have to understand some of the barriers and issues they're navigating don't just happen because they're queer. It might be because they're racialized. It might be because of their gender. It might be because they have any other marginalizing identity factors, or some factors that aren't marginalizing, but then have created barriers about how they navigate the spaces that they are in. So the example that we have there is a Black queer newcomer faces racism, homophobia, and xenophobia simultaneously. Where do we even start if someone shows up to you with that? There are times where you're like, well, what is the bigger issue? Is it their racism? Is it the homophobia? Is it the xenophobia? Where do I begin to unpack how I can help the individual showing up with such complexities? So a lovely way for people to visualize the different intersecting identities that exist. People's race and ethnicity, which I would like to say are two different things. I am racially Black, my ethnicity is Nigerian. So my ethnicity is not just Nigerian, I'm Nigerian, Igbo, it's a whole other complicated mishmash of stuff. My gender identity is identify as female. My class right now is middle class. We don't know how long that will continue to last, but I'm going to hold on to it for as long as possible. My language, English here at home, Igbo, which means depending on the spaces that I am and what I choose to present, it may or may not be a barrier for me navigating the world. My religion right now, none. We're working through that personally. Ability is one that I like people to know that can waver. I stand in front of you today as able-bodied. If you were talking to me 3 weeks ago, I was not. I had a vertigo attack, I was sidelined, and I was unable to do the things that were once easy for me. And so when you're supporting individuals who are coming to you, understand that if they show up currently looking able-bodied, you might not be aware of what disabilities they may or may not possess and how that can affect their access to information, support, and or community. Mental health, precarious on the best of days, but that is also something you need to take into account, whether the individuals are open enough to tell you about their mental health struggles, because they might be barriers to access for them that they aren't able to present to you due to whatever other inhibiting factors they have in their own space. Age, that one is also will change. Education is also a really big one when you're coming with newcomers. Some of the times that people are newcomers might be because they are trying to get an education or because they feel that their education is not valid in the spaces that they are. So you need to be understanding about what they hold important to them and what society has deemed important, especially in sense of education, both academic and lived experience. And then many other things create the identity of an individual. So when people are showing up, they are all these things at the same time, but you do not know which is the most important thing to them at that point in time. So it's important that when you're doing your intake and you're working with people, you give them room to tell you what are their most important factors, what are the areas in which they need support, not what you deem they need support with, but where they deem for themselves is important, what they need support in, and what that support looks like. Because there's a tendency for us to say, I see you and I know where you want to be. But until you talk to me, you don't know if success to me is just that I make it home at the end of the day and there is no stress, or if success is to me is I'm CEO of this next not-for-profit. And it's not for you to tell me what success looks like for me, but I tell you what it looks like, how I want to get there, and what I need you to do to aid me in that, and not for you to deem this is what I'm going to do to get you to where I think you need to be at the end of the day. So I love this quote by Kimberly. If you do not understand intersectionality, you can't fully address the barriers marginalized people face. So before you can support anyone, you need to deeply understand who they are at their core. So what are some of the challenges that people showing up in your spaces needing support might face? There is the basics, the ones we typically used to hear. There's the racism, there's the xenophobia, there's the homophobia and transphobia in terms of access to service. When we think access to service, are they talking about access to education, access to housing, finding a doctor who is able to support them in all the things that they might be going through? There is, if they've made it to you where they say, we found someone, but they don't understand me, is there cultural competency for the individuals who are servicing them or who are supporting them beyond you? So there's a fear of judgment or invisibility with cultural competency. As a Black woman who has mental health struggles, I can tell you the amount of times I've gone into therapy to say, hey, I need support. And my therapist is listing issues for me. And I'm like, that's not my problem. That is not why I'm sitting in front of you. You do not understand enough about me and my culture and my other intersecting identities to provide me support. So we need to be aware when we're giving out resources to clients and people who are engaging with us that we ensure that the people we're referring to them to have enough information about who they are and their potential challenges so that we do not create more trauma for them or more barriers they have to overcome in order to get to where they're trying to be. And then there is, because we live in the system that we do and the bureaucracy that we have, there are legal issues that people sometimes have to deal with. You might not be well versed in all of the legal competencies and intersecting platforms that people might have to go through. And it's important that you are honest with the people that you are serving. I know as humans, we want to help and we want to serve and we want to present that we have it all together. You are more likely to cause more harm if you think you have it all together and you don't, and you give someone advice and it's something that lands them into more trouble than they're with. So it's important to be honest with them about what information you can provide them with, where they can access more information. And if you don't know and the system isn't set up to support them, you tell them. You say, at this point in time, we do not have the resources, but doesn't mean we're going to stop here. We will work to get them, but we need to know that we're working together and it's not just me dictating what is capable for you at this time. And then mental health is key. It's scary enough to show up in a new place, to leave the things that are familiar to you, to end up in a community. And sometimes if you're showing up in the dead of winter, that is one of the most isolating times an individual can show up in our country, in our provinces. How do they find community? How do they find safety? How do they handle leaving whatever trauma they were in and showing up in this new space and now facing new ones where I don't have people who look like me, sound like me. I can't access the basic things as food that makes me feel at home. How do you support their mental health? Or how do you begin to have conversations with individuals who haven't talked about mental health before? So once again, I will use myself for an example. I remember this first time that my mental health became an issue and I had to talk about it. And I carried all the stigma about what mental illness looked like, what it felt like. And then I went into therapy and they're like, well, talk to your community. No, absolutely not. My community was not currently set up to handle the conversation about mental health and mental illness. So it's important that we help people destigmatize when they show up in our spaces, what their mental health can look like. Explain to them that sometimes it's going to be fluid, that not every day is going to be great and not every day is going to be the pits, and that it's okay to seek help, and that help can come in a variety of different ways. It is not always talk therapy. Sometimes it's medication. Sometimes it's a combination of both, and that whatever they need at any point in time, you will provide resources that can help them support their journey in the long run. Clicky. Okay. So this quote, for many queer newcomers, survival depends on navigating a system that weren't often built with them in mind. Before I switch to the next slide, when you think about the systems you have to navigate on the day-to-day, getting your driver's license, finding a doctor, finding food, finding transportation, how many of you found it really easy? Like you can do a thumbs up so you don't have to put your whole hand up. How many of you felt like the system was built specifically with you in mind? So if you know the system wasn't built with you in mind, imagine with someone else coming into the space knowing that all of us are very diverse in the places that we come from, our identities, our education, our way of life, and none of us felt the system was built for us. But these are the systems that we tell people that, hey, you just got to navigate, we'll make it through. Remember that it wasn't built with them, so you have to help create handles, barriers, supports to help them navigate what they weren't taking into account to build, but now they are forced to go through. Clicker. Okay, we have another slide. It's like, how do we go back? What do you think is the most important factor when it comes to creating spaces safe spaces for queer newcomers? And I'm going to put a caveat on the word safe, because safe means something different to every individual. I use safe because it's a term we're most commonly used to, but think brave spaces where people can show up either as whole as they are or as broken as they might feel. I love all the things that are pouring in, understanding what safe means to them, empathy and compassion, listening, acceptance, responsiveness, trauma-informed, letting them know you accept and support them and don't make their queerness something weird and respect how they want to be addressed. Absolutely. Understanding that what they need in safe and secure is based on their understanding. Give them the time and the space to come to terms with their identity. These are all fantastic. Okay, I'm going to click off, but please feel free to continue to answer, and I will go back to them all later. So we've talked about these ideas of how people will show up to us and the things that they might be carrying that they will lay bare in front of us. What are you supposed to do now? It's one thing for me to tell you all the problems that are going to be showing up at your door. You need tools in order to support the people. So there's a lovely idea called empathy mapping. It's where you help your clients, give voice to their needs and figure out what they need to do to get there. And it's a wonderful strategy, and there are many different resources. If you Google empathy mapping, there are a bunch of different resources that will come up. But the first step is to helping people voice what they're feeling. Typically, when we think about emotions, we have happy, sad, mad, tired, and those are the general ones, but those are more complex. The human identity and the emotional range is more complex than I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm tired. There's this wonderful tool called the feelings wheel, which expands those into as broad as a range as possible and helps your clients figure out where do you feel and helps them put the words, because the only way we can understand people is when they're able to communicate. It's important to help give people the voice, the language they need to explain what they're feeling and what they're navigating. Trauma-informed practices. I'm pretty sure within all your organizations, you have codes of conduct of how to handle trauma and how to support individuals through trauma. Yes? No? Are there any organizations working without having trauma supports? No? Okay, wicked. If you are, it's important to make sure that those are up to date for you and your staff and that you are adequately prepared, because there's nothing worse than trying to support an individual. I have been on the front lines where I haven't been provided with the adequate supports for trauma-informed practices, and then you have someone who's unloading all their traumas onto you. You have no way on how to guide them. You have no way on how to handle it for yourself, how to process the information that you're being given, and how to adequately support them into taking their next steps. Resource mapping is the next one, identifying what local organizations that support the 2S LGBTQI community look like, not just for yourselves, but within your greater community, because people aren't stagnant. People are going to move, they're going to travel. The fact that someone can go from St. John's to Fredericton to Moncton on any given day, you need to know what exists in your community, where there is capacity, one, to even support them, what those supports look like. Are they drop-in services? Are there community or space where they can find not just like individual frontline support, but a rec room where they can go and find community, language supports where they're able to go. So building these resources for them and for yourself so that at any given point in time, you have a list available to you to hand off to an individual, because not everyone is going to be able to take everything you give them at the same time. You need to give them something that they can process in their own time and that they can work through in a way that works for them. And then boundary setting, ensuring that they know what you can do and what sometimes is completely out of your hands, because there are going to be times where your hands are tied. You can't do anything because the system is not set up for you to support them. And then you let them know, I will advocate in the ways that I can, but there is nothing I can do beyond this. And not because I don't care about you, not because I don't want to help you, but because the system hasn't gotten to that point. And this is just what I have to do. And it's make sure that you support your own mental health, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you have to take every aspect of your work home with you at the end of the day. There are going to be pieces that you do take home. You are human. If you are not, I would like you to let me know what AI chip you're all working with that allows you to check everything at 5 p.m. and move on. But it's important to figure out how to set boundaries with your clients, with your teams, so that you get a space that you can find safety in for yourselves as well. So empathy is about standing in someone else's shoes, feeling with their heart and seeing with their eyes. And this is by Daniel H. Pink. So why is this quote important? Usually when we start doing this work, it's not always from a place of empathy. It's usually the first human emotion is sympathy. You feel bad for what someone else is going through. When you're working from a place of sympathy, there becomes this saviorism that comes into it, where you're trying to impose what your beliefs and your thoughts are on what helping them looks like. Empathy takes you out of it. It sees what they're going through, what they deem is important to them, and then you help them navigate with what they have available to them and what you have available to lend to them. So a real life application. So we're gonna, in your tables, because most of you are sitting at tables of people you know and speaking the same language. See, are we all generally in tables with people who we can communicate with? All right, so we're gonna work together for a little bit of an activity. So a queer refugee from a culturally conservative background faces challenges accessing mental health services. As a team in your tables, I would like you to figure out what are the barriers that you see for the individual in this case. How, as a frontline worker, can you use an intersectional approach to support them? And then we will talk about what those solutions look like. So I'll give you, can I get a time check? But 5 minutes? We're good for 5 minutes. I know that's a really fast time, but for 5 minutes, can you talk within your tables and see how you would support them in that space and what the solution that's collaborative and community-based can look like for your community?
My name is Zara. I'm from St. John Newcomers Center, and we had like a briefing and discussion, and we have like bullet points answering the first question and then the second one. So in regards to what are the barriers in that case, we're thinking that the first one is going to be lack of awareness. Some people, they might harm without intention, just because they don't know how to act in particular situations, not because they're bad people or they're mean. No, they just don't know how to act. The second one is going to be stigma. This is for those who know and they still treat them in a weird way. Second one is going to be the cultural aspect. We think this is very important to consider all the cultural aspects of the person, of the background of their family, culture, and everything related to that person, and the person who is working as a frontline worker. So sometimes there is a clash in those two worlds. Some people, they're coming from very reserved and very conservative backgrounds, and the person who's sitting in front of them, they're coming from very liberal and free, open-minded communities, right? And there is a clash where the clash is happening. The second one, what we notice in settlement sector is the language. Language is a huge barrier. The way we understand each other, the vocabulary we use. Some people, they speak like very complex English and they're trying to express themselves in a full. But another person like sitting in front of you, very limited with their language, like French, English. And you have to try to adjust your language to accommodate that person. This is your goal, to have like clear communication. The fifth one, we have noticed like there is a lot of rigidity in approach. So we're rigid. We're thinking like, okay, this is the step-by-step I'm gonna be following and everything is gonna be fine. It's not gonna work. You have to tweak, you have to adjust, you have to be flexible. And the last but not the least is gonna be lack of resources and support in the community. We feel like as settlement workers, we need to get resources to grow, to evolve as a personality, as a professionals. We need resources and we need support. And do you want me to go to the second question, like how to cope? Yeah. So how can a frontline worker use an intersectional approach to support them? First one, we're thinking like education and training, like conferences like this and training programs might be very useful for frontline workers. As many you will be undergoing, the better for you. The second one is going to be keeping open mind for anything. Just be an active listener, see what that person wants, just hear, listen and hear. It's a different, some people, they mix listening and hearing. You can hear what people are saying, but you're not listening. You have to be an active listener. Show empathy, just be a human being, just try to be in that person's shoes, try to understand, try to feel. Asking the right questions, which is very important. Just be polite and ask right questions to make it clear for you. It's not like you know everything. It's not about you knowing everything, but it's about asking the person, how would you like me to help you? Sometimes people are like, oh, I would like this. And you're like, wow, I would never think about this. But this is your goal, right? In helping. And we are thinking like, try to keep that equity, not the equality, not to treat everyone equally. It doesn't work, but try to keep that equity, try to adjust your service to each person, like according to that situation. And the last one, we feel like integration is very important. You have to help that person to integrate in a society, in the community they're living in, not to try to say, okay, you are a queer, so you are going like separate, you are. No, they're part of the community, they're part of the gang, right? They need to be there to feel like, okay, I'm a part of this place, I belong. This is the main goal, for them not to be limited, not to be eliminated in their like vacuum. That's the goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? While we go over there, all I could think about when you were talking is if everyone has seen the skit where it's like in the club, we fam, and that's what we were trying to go with. In this club, we are all fam, and that's where I am with that.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. At the table with me, there's my coworkers Reem, Fadi, and Kita. We're all from ARAISA in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. So our answer to the first question, what are the barriers in this case? We all thought of just stigma and stereotypes and fear that's already embedded in ourselves from, for forever growing up in our own home countries and in our cultures. And we also noticed that unfortunately sometimes you come here thinking of this place where there's diversity and openness and where you will be safe and free to be yourself. And then you see yourself surrounded with people from your own community who sometimes, not maliciously maybe, but they tend to just repeat the same cycle of judgment. And so then it's just the fear comes back, and it's very difficult to, to tell yourself that you're now safe. And then, how can a frontline worker use an intersectional approach to support them? We think you said it perfectly. So instead of assuming what it is that they need, to give room for them to tell us in what area in their life they need help with. So maybe instead of following a standard one for all type of checklist, to create the space in the sessions that we have with clients, either if it's an intake or a workshop, to allow them to open up. And because these are difficult conversations and difficult topics, we don't think that they happen organically. Usually someone's not just going to come up to you and talk about their feelings or their difficulties in expressing themselves and talking about their mental health. So maybe we have to purposefully create the time, the place, the space where they can feel free to talk about this, whether it's through workshops, women's circles, men groups, youth circles, where maybe we're the first ones talking about the subject so that they see that it's okay to talk about it. Yeah, I think that's what we have.
Okay. We're going to go to a francophone table. I'm just going to get headphones so I can listen to the francophone table when they actually explain it in a language that's comfortable for them. So 2 seconds.
Bonjour tout le monde. Pardon, je me présente, Reda Djouri. Je suis conseiller en employabilité auprès de Immigration francophone de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Mes collègues, là, ils font partie du même organisme. Cynthia, Loretta et Ardo. Déjà, j'aimerais bien être très bref parce que tout ce qui a été dit, il n'y a pas lieu à répéter certaines choses, mais je peux dire que par rapport au premier point, déjà, il y a eu des divergences ici, entre nous. Ça veut dire que la divergence fait qu'on respecte le point de vue des autres. Et ça, en soi, c'est une chose qui fait que ça nous emmène à respecter non seulement les choix, mais aussi les gens avec leur diversité. Et c'est ce qui fait la force, soi-disant, de l'équipe dans un micro-environnement, mais aussi nos organisations, nos provinces et le pays en général par rapport au Canada. Et c'est ce qui fait la signature du Canada. Maintenant, pour parler des points, je peux dire que parmi les divergences, il y a quelqu'un qui a dit ici, comparé à de là où je viens, il n'y a pas de barrière. On la comprend parce que elle fait le parallèle entre son pays, là où elle était, où des gens, en fait, il y a une différence qui n'est pas acceptée. Et là, elle voit qu'il y a quand même, comparé relativement à ces pays, il y a une, relativement parlant, il y a cette acceptation. Donc ça, en soi, on accepte. Le reste des gens ici autour de la table, on a parlé en pensant à certains points que je peux vous citer rapidement. Il y a le sentiment d'insécurité. On est stigmatisé, ça a été dit auparavant. Donc quand on arrive ici, on est stigmatisé. On peut pas partir vers autrui et s'exprimer librement et parler des choses qui dérangent. Et ça, en soi, c'est des choses qui sont soi-disant des barrières. Aussi, il y a le deuxième point, qui est le manque de confiance. De fait du vécu dans le temps, on peut avoir certaines, je dirais, cicatrices qui font que c'est pas évident. D'où l'intérêt, on va le voir après au niveau des solutions, d'être dans l'écoute active. Mais bon, je vais parler des deux un peu d'une manière un peu mixte. Donc, il faut écouter. Il faut démontrer qu'on est là pour aider. C'est le but qui fait qu'on est tous aujourd'hui réunis. Si on n'était pas, soi-disant, convaincus par rapport à ça, je ne vois pas pourquoi on sera là aujourd'hui. Donc, nous tous, on est concernés, on est là dans l'écoute, on tend la main, mais on doit gagner la confiance d'autrui. Il y a un autre point qui est les process. Malheureusement, après échange avec plusieurs des organismes qui sont là, ce qu'on appelle les frontline ici, il n'y a pas de process clair pour certains, je ne parle pas pour l'ensemble, il n'y a pas de process clair par rapport à quelqu'un. Oui, je peux être bon, je peux être quelqu'un qui est dans l'acceptation d'autrui, mais d'un point de vue opérationnel, processus, dans mon organisme, qu'est-ce que je peux faire pour aider autrui à s'intégrer dans la société? Ça, en soi, c'est une autre barrière qu'il faut penser à traiter Un autre point, c'est aussi les stéréotypes. Je vais être franc avec vous aujourd'hui. Je suis un musulman, je suis pratiquant, je suis fier d'être musulman. Malheureusement, des deux côtés, même moi aussi, je suis stigmatisé par certains qui pensent que parce que je suis musulman, que je vais pas accepter autrui. Donc du coup, si dans les mindsets, on fait changer ça, et on fait comprendre aux gens qu'on est là beaucoup plus pour s'entraider les uns les autres. C'est humain. Il n'y a pas de différence entre qui que ce soit. On va aller de l'avant. Donc, ces éléments-là, ça, c'est les éléments qui font que c'est des barrières. Maintenant, humblement, on a pensé à certaines choses pour aider à aller de l'avant. Première des choses, c'est l'empathie. Ça a été évoqué auparavant. Bien sûr, on doit se mettre, et ça a été bien fait. On la remercie, madame, pour avoir bien, en fait, présenté ça au début comme étant, on doit se mettre à la place d'autrui, avoir pensé en ayant les sentiments avec le cœur d'autrui et les yeux d'autrui pour se mettre à sa place. Il y a aussi le fait d'être dans l'écoute active que j'ai cité auparavant, se faire accompagner, très important. Ce genre, on vous remercie par rapport à ce genre d'événements qui nous aident à comprendre comment faire parce qu'il y a ces lacunes de processus dans nos organismes. Ça peut nous aider à comprendre comment traiter avec autrui et tendre la main. Et voilà. Donc, merci. Et je passe la parole à une autre personne.
Is there another French-speaking table that would like to go? Or a bilingual table? Okay.
Oui, bonjour. Moi, c'est Jean Herman. Je travaille pour l'association multiculturelle de la région Chaleur. Donc, je vais être court. Je ne vais pas répéter tout ce que les autres ont dit. Au niveau des obstacles, je dirais plutôt que quelque chose qui est très important, c'est la difficulté de la personne à naviguer dans le système canadien. Je parle plutôt de le système de santé mentale, par exemple. Parfois, la personne peut ressentir que santé mentale, ça peut-être veut dire autre chose. Ou de se retrouver dans le système pour trouver de l'aide. Ça, c'est très, très important. Et je regarde pour ne pas... oui, il y a aussi toutes sortes de barrières culturelles. Peut-être que la personne aussi, dans sa culture, vit une certaine pression. Donc, il y a toute cette idée de l'ensemble de la personne qu'il faut tenir compte. Et autre chose que je vais souligner, qui est très, très important, pour ne pas répéter ce que les autres ont dit, la reformulation. Ça, c'est très important, la reformulation, de bien comprendre ce que la personne veut dire. Donc, parfois, c'est très important de reformuler pour bien comprendre les difficultés que la personne vit. Je regarde autre chose aussi. Et oui, quelque chose aussi qui n'a pas été noté, c'est aussi rassurer la personne de la confidentialité et du respect de la vie privée. Donc, les autres ont été exprimés, donc je vais m'arrêter ici. Merci.
Awesome. Okay, we got another table.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Joseph Quetieux, je représente le CAFI à Saint-Jean. Je voudrais rebondir sur les propos du collègue tout à l'heure relatifs aux barrières culturelles en lien avec la santé mentale. Moi, je suis venu parce que c'est une question qui me taraude l'esprit. En général, j'ai sous le bras à l'heure actuelle une famille avec des problèmes mentaux, mais il y a des communautés dans lesquelles les problèmes mentaux sont généralement perçus comme stigmatisants. Il y a des communautés dans lesquelles, lorsque vous évoquez les problèmes mentaux qui sont manifestes, cela est considéré par les autres membres comme étant de la folie. Et donc, on a généralement de la peine à s'exprimer relativement aux problèmes mentaux qui pourtant sont récurrents dans la communauté des nouveaux arrivants. Donc, quand je venais ce matin, je me disais, peut-être je vais rencontrer des gens qui sont confrontés aux situations similaires et peut-être il y aura un partage d'expérience qui me permettra de mieux faire face à ce type de situation. Merci.
So I really like that you brought that up. So we'll take this off. I don't need to hear myself echo into my own ears. I really like that you brought that up because as someone who lives in St. John's, Newfoundland, what I've seen is a lot of culturally diverse communities take on mental health for their communities where they are educating themselves and not relying on frontline workers to do it alone, but they're showing up to their frontline workers being like, we know our community holds a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health, when it comes to queer identities. What can we do to break that stigma within our communities so it's not just on you as a frontline worker or resettlement worker to bridge that gap? So one of the things I've seen is frontline work serving organizations offer holistic, as a community, we're going to do a mental health 101. So one, we can inform you on what mental health looks like, what the overarching mental illness diagnoses can be versus overall mental health, so that helping the community break the stigma and not just trying to work on the individual. So creating spaces so the entire community comes in and you're working with them and building that bridge and not just leaving it on you and the person to navigate it alone, because we don't exist in silos. We exist and thrive when we're in community. So how do we support the entire community? So we bring space so the entire community can come into it and do the learning together and work through those awkward, sticky, and sometimes very uncomfortable situations. And then we provide them with ongoing resources where it's not a one and done. We don't say you've done your mental health 101 for the year, never again do I have to speak to you, but regularly have spaces where you can explore these ideas, these concepts, and give them resources to further serve themselves within their community. So that's one thing I've seen. So I'm Nigerian. I've seen the Nigerian community in Newfoundland and Labrador do mental health sessions, offer mental health training so they can figure out how to serve their own community when the community doesn't always want to show up to a frontline worker. So we've talked, so instead of doing the Slido, we talked about this as a group. Excuse me. So what would be our first steps in these scenarios? The first step is to understand the individual showing up in front of us, give them the room to voice what their barriers are when they're trying to access services. We might have some preconceived ideas of what their difficulties are, but it is important for us to allow them state what their biggest issue is. For a lot of us, we came in, if we go back, the question was, what are the barriers in this case? They're facing challenges finding mental health services. Maybe their challenge isn't in the culturally competent mental health service. Maybe it's just, I don't even know where to go for my first thing. Not that I need them to understand my cultural competencies. I don't know where to find a therapist. I don't know where to find a clinician. I don't know my first step. So it's important for us to let them tell us where their barrier is, not for us to figure out what their barrier is. Because for a lot of us, we were working on the concept that their barrier was culturally competent mental health care, not just where is a mental health care professional at the bare minimum. So the anonymous, what are the first steps? Ask the stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. Ask the nitty, the gritty, the uncomfortable. Ask the bare, as basic of the questions as you need, so they can give you as basic of the answers as they have, so you can help them navigate. Asking what are the goals the client wants to focus on. Do the research in your community to figure out what does exist and what is applicable to them. Meet them where they are at the moment, not what you assume they need or want. Making a list of resources and then advertising it to them. Be the safe side to be asked, creating a safe space for them to ask what they need and speak openly and listen, and you let them talk. I love that end of that one, very important. You let them talk, no interrupting. You wait till they've expended everything and then you take notes and then you re-ask them based on that. And then I like that it was mentioned, but you ensure them their privacy. You ensure them that what they say to you is not going to get back to their community, especially if they're willing to be vulnerable with you. Because there is that fear after they've unloaded all of this on you, you now know their innermost thoughts, their deepest, darkest secrets. And there's a fear that you might be talking to someone else in their community and volunteer this information accidentally. So you need to ensure to them that you are aware that this is a private conversation and it will stay private unless their physical health is at risk, in terms of where you do have safety conducts and where you do have to inform someone should they be in a situation where they might harm themselves or harm someone else. So we've talked about the mental health of our clients. We've talked about the mental health of the people we support. We haven't talked about your mental health, because you can't pour from an empty cup if you are not working in a space where you have the tools and resources to support your own mental health. How are you going to be able to help someone else? So it's important that you be aware of what burnout looks like, not just the overarching burnout, but what does burnout look for each and every single one of you? For me, it means that when I notice that I'm burned out, I have no desire to do the things that I enjoy. And I enjoy reading a good book. I enjoy a glass of wine. I enjoy communing with my friends. And the minute that I know that I have done so much work in frontline, in presenting, in speaking in engagements where I do not want to talk to any other human being, I was like, okay, we have hit a bad point. We should not get to a point where I do not want to do the things that I enjoy. It's important that you figure out what self-care looks like for you. Bathtub, bubble baths, all fantastic. But are you drinking enough water? Are you eating things that help you feel revitalized and rejuvenated? Are you talking to your own mental health professionals should you have access to them? Do your organizations have an EAP program that allows you to talk to an individual who is trained to support frontline workers in this kind of work? Do you have vacation days and do you use them? I know in this time of work, you always think about making sure you're there for the people you care about and you're supporting, but you need to go on vacation. No one wants to burnt out you at work, because then one of the things that happens when you get burnt out, you get compassion fatigue. It is not a good place when you're working from a place of compassion fatigue, when you do not have it in you to be empathetic anymore, when you're listening to someone and frankly, you don't care because you don't have it in you to care anymore. So use the resources that you have. Figure out a self-care routine that is practical for you. You can't soak in a tub for 14 hours. Well, if you can, yay, you, but you'll get real pruny, and I don't think anyone wants to deal with that. But figure out what caring for your own mental health looks like and ask for help. The same way we encourage the people who are showing up to us to ask for help and to be open. Are you asking for help? Are you saying, I need support? Are you leaning on each other, on your community when you get there? I know we have a tendency to carry it all on ourselves. If you burn out, that's one less person that's able to support the community you so want to help. That's one less brain, one less pair of hands, one less set of ears to listen to someone. So make sure you lean on your coworkers in a gentle way, not fully like collapse and say you're on your own, but lean on the systems that you have. And when you realize that you are not in a good place, step back, because you need to refuel yourself in order to come back to be on the front lines to do this kind of work. How? So now we get on the fun part, because one of the things that I've realized in working front lines and doing all this, you sometimes are in a silo when you're dealing with the problem. It's like, this is what my organization offers. This is where the resources are. But what's the organization across the street from you doing? You don't have to rebuild the wheel each and every single time. What are the resources that exist in the greater resettlement community? What are the resources that exist in the greater frontline community? Are you collaborating? One of the things that I realized as I was putting this together is when you think about integrating them into community, you as an organization integrated into those communities that you're serving. Are you showing up at their cultural festivals? Are you networking with them to figure out what's going on so you better know how to support the people showing up in your spaces? If you're not, you're putting added work on yourself and trying to form communities where they don't already exist for you. Where have you seen partnerships be successful? I know in the not-for-profit sector, you're usually working with very limited dollars. One of the things that I happen to know as someone who's worked in the not-for-profit sector and been in government at one point, government likes it when you work together. They're more willing to fund projects and programs when they see a communal reach because they think it's going to serve more people. They count numbers, they count number of visits, not individuals personally helped. So if you can extend that, it makes it better for you in order to build those resources. We were talking about, do we have enough capacity within ourselves, or is there enough capacity within the sector and the field? And then a call for action. As you sit at these tables, and later we're going to get into the group work where I'm going to force you to talk to people that you do not work with, so that you're going to be forced to strengthen and build these communities of practice across your provinces, across the borders, because as I said in the beginning, the clients that you serve in resettlement, their initial point of contact is you, but that's not where they're going to be permanent. The goal for people that you are helping resettle is that they find a home. No one says their home is in New Brunswick. No one says it's in Nova Scotia, and no one says it's in Newfoundland. They will determine where their home is. So you need to make sure that you are aware of the communities that exist from them should they leave your shores, and so they know the first person to call wherever they end up. So, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much, by Helen Keller. I've talked a lot about the things that you can do, the things that you need to do, the things that you should do in order to do this work. But I haven't spent a lot of time telling you how amazing it is, the things that you are doing, that you're working with fixed budgets, with people coming to you and you don't know where the next dollar is coming in, but you know you need to help them. So I would like for you, for a second, around your tables, to go around with each other in the community that you work, to say one thing that you are really proud of yourself and your team for accomplishing in serving the communities that you serve. So we're going to take 7 minutes because this is more important. But together, talk about one success, one part where you looked and you said, I didn't know how we were going to do it, but we did it. And I'm really proud that we were able to do it. So for a few minutes together, recognize what you have done and where you are and where you came from to be able to do that work. Okay, together, talk in your tables for 7 minutes about where your successes have been. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt the really fun part of this, but I'm going to bring us back because I know I have taken into our wellness break, and I don't know about you, but a bathroom break would be essential before we go into a workshop. So what have we covered today? That intersectionality is important in understanding our clients' experiences and the ways they show up in front of us. That addressing systemic barriers requires cultural competency, but more importantly, it requires us to be empathetic. That tools and exist to support both clients, but to also support you in the work that you do. And that collaboration strengthens your ability to serve effectively. So, you're going to be done with me in a few minutes, but I want you to take those things that you shared about where your successes are. When you go into your groups later after the break, that's how you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to say, hi, this is who I am. I'm on your new tables, and this is what I'm most proud of that I've accomplished as you step in to this scope of work. And I know, Rhiannon, you're making eye contact with me. I don't want to, but one of the hardest things as humans, especially humans doing this kind of work, we don't do the tap on our back. We don't brag about who we are or the work that we do. But I know your colleagues would also love to hear what you feel that you're proud of, because I'm pretty sure they would be very proud of you too for accomplishing what you do to support the people that you support. So it's going to be how you introduce yourselves, not just this is who I am and this is where I work, but this is who I am, this is where I work, and this is what I'm most proud of that I've accomplished so far in the work that I do. So with that, small acts when multiplied by millions of people can transform the world. If you have questions, you can also add them in the Slido. We will talk about them after. If you are looking for resources, I have done a first initial step of things that do exist for you all to find resources to support yourselves and the teams that you have. If you don't have access to it, let me know. You can all send the request for access and I'll make sure it becomes accessible to you all, but it should be. If it's not, I will do the back end tiddlywink thing